Active listening is taught in another lesson. If you have completed that lesson, I hope you've been working on your listening skills, and if that lesson is coming up for you, then know that listening is the basis for much of management. Whether it is resolving conflict or preventing conflict, coaching your employees, or managing projects, we can only succeed as a manager through the active involvement of other people, and their involvement requires us hearing their viewpoints, status updates, and concerns. When we listen actively, we indicate our full attention, reflect the speaker's message back, what we heard or understood, and if needed, encourage elaboration and further details. Throughout, we need to exercise emotional and environmental control. We turn off all notifications and close down electronics. We disallow random thoughts from interfering in our listening. These take discipline. We often distract ourselves mentally. When we're in a conflict, it is all the more imperative that we clear our mind and our physical space to facilitate listening. The next key to conflict resolution is assertively communicating. As you may recall, assertiveness is not the same as aggressiveness. When you are in a conflict, you do not have to only listen. We need to be heard as well to honor our own values, needs, and commitments. You have the right to be listened to, as well as a responsibility to listen to others. If the other person is unable to hear you at that moment, there are too many distractions, or their emotions are running high, suggest a break, but be sure to set a clear time to regroup. Otherwise, you may never be heard. There is no point in continuing to talk when the other person cannot listen. You can help yourself speak assertively by first recognizing whether you are speaking from a place of emotions, thoughts, or self-identity. This is a concept from the book Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most by Douglas Stone, Bruce Penton, and Sheila Heen. Most of us assume we're talking about facts when we're in a conflict. I encourage you to consider before you speak, what am I feeling? If you are angry, know that anger is often a proxy for frustration, hurt, or disappointment, or even fear. Pinpointing your true feelings will help you express yourself and help the other person understand your position. Imagine the difference between saying to my employee, "I am angry you left the conference room a mess when you knew I had an important client coming in right after your meeting," versus, "It was frustrating for me to spend the first few minutes before my client meeting cleaning up the mess in the conference room rather than preparing. They're an important client, and it's a bad look for the company that they had to wait while I set up the presentation. What can we do to ensure everyone cleans the conference room after their own meetings?" Do you hear the difference between angry and frustrating? Especially with the explanation as to why you'd be frustrated. You have invited the other person into a solution-finding discussion with the "what can we do" line, rather than a blaming discussion. Sometimes another person crosses a boundary we did not know we had until they crossed it. In these cases, venting anger at that person is unfair. They could not have avoided the conflict. It's best to simply state your boundary and ask the other person to honor it in the future. I also encourage you to consider whether your self-identity is wrapped up in the conflict. In the conference room example, I might be able to calm myself enough to speak productively with the other person when I consider whether the client cares about the state of the conference room, or whether I care about those things because I self-identify as someone neat and organized and always completely prepared. Perhaps the client appreciated the time spent chatting as I set up the presentation. There is nothing wrong with that self-identity. It probably helps with client management. My point is that recognizing that I am talking about myself and not the client might help me articulate my needs. I could say, if talking to a peer or someone above me on the org chart, "I would appreciate our working together to put a plan in place that ensures that the conference room is left clean, with all trash removed, chairs in place around the table, and the technology shut down. This will enable me to be my best when presenting to clients. Are you willing to support me in that?" With someone who reports to me, I could make that same statement, or I could simply state, "Please devise a plan to ensure the conference room is cleaned when meetings end." Consider whether you're discussing facts, your feelings, or your own self-identity. I'm going to tell a story now, but I need to preface it with this. The story I am about to tell is true. Nothing I am about to share in this story should be construed as legal advice. If you face or witness something similar, please seek legal counsel. A very long time ago, I worked for a company and as part of a leadership rotational program began working in a new division. There were times when the leadership team was meeting and needed the perspective of one of the junior executives. We would call in the executive, get their information, and send them out. There was one junior executive whose leaving the room always precipitated a gay joke. Someone seemed to be ever ready with a new one. What do you think I did?